okay, to get this started, you're pursuing adoption. How did that begin?
Yes. So we're not necessarily, we're pursuing the completion of an adoption,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It began really in my wife's heart. We decided, I actually wanted to surprise my wife and take her to a Stephen Curtis Chapman concert.
Mm.
And so there's so much that goes into this whole story. So I'll try to do as best I can to keep it as brief as possible, but we didn't have the money to even go to the concert, and so I'm just praying that God would give me this money to be able to go and provide for this surprise for my wife. And I actually was working doing sales at the time, and I won a contest, and so I got the money to be able to do it. I didn't tell her. I bought the tickets. We went to the concert, and in the middle of the concert, this is around 2004, 2005 ish, but around that time, Stephen Curtis Chapman had just adopted their first daughter, and they started this Shoanna's Hope organization, and which eventually turned into this huge orphanage and adoption thing. But I think they had some work with the agency we were with, and in the middle of the concert, they're like, hey, we're gonna take a break, and you can go out and check out the different booths and all that stuff. And so we went out there and getting some information, getting a little stretch break, and they said, you want to write your name down here, we'll send you some more information. And so we just did that. We're not thinking anything of it. You're just sending your information up there. And eventually we start getting information from the agency. We got information from Shoanna's Hope. And so one day my wife decided that she was going to sit down actually and look at the packet that came in the mail, because she remembers seeing a picture of Stephen Curtis Chapman's daughter, and she liked her hair. And so she's like, I'm just going to sit down, and I want my hair done, and I'm going to look at the hair. And so she looks at it, and she starts to read through the packet and starts reading about adoption, and all of a sudden just kind of felt like this. A friend of mine calls it the boom, boom, booms, like when the spirit starts kind of moving. And she started getting the boom, boom, booms, and she's like, well, that was kind of weird. I actually kind of dropped the brochure and was like, what was that? She picks it back up and starts reading again, and there was a DVD that came along, and so she watched the DVD and found herself just in tears. And during that season, she began to journal in prayer as she's praying and asking God about this whole thing. And started praying for a girl, and she does have journal entries from December of 2005. That there were journal entries just praying for this girl who she doesn't know if she's born or who it is, but all we knew was going to be a little girl from China. That's all we knew. And so she starts praying for this girl, and that's really when the seed started to get planted. And then Marcia asked if I wanted to go to another information night about it. And believe it or not, I ended a hunting trip early this is back when I was a big-time hunter, but I ended a hunting trip early to go to this seminar and learn a little bit more about adoption. And we both agreed that we were to adopt someday. We didn't know how or when. We knew that we didn't meet the criteria, or we didn't make enough, or we weren't married long enough to be able to do it, or whatever. But at that time we had 2 kids, 2 boys in our family that were our biological kids, but we just felt we were supposed to adopt. Well, it kind of felt like it was put on the shelf, but my wife just kept praying for this girl, and over the years learned that God said, if you're going to call this girl Ava, because the name Ava brings life, and she will bring life to all people who she comes in contact with, whether it's personal or just hears about her story or whatever. But Ava means life, and she will give life to people. And so unbeknownst to me, there was a couple of totes in our basement with Ava's name on it that started to fill up with girl stuff.
She was preparing for this child.
Oh yeah, but never knowing when any of this was going to take place, and so life just kind of went on from then. And she would talk to me about it from time to time, and share little things about it. I mean, she'd see little Chinese girls here and there, and just has a heart for them, and just real excited in anticipation of when God would do this. And so around March of this year, of 2019, my wife came to me and said, I want to talk to you seriously about this adoption thing, because I think we're supposed to start this process. And there were so many different things she had been journaling about over the years, about who this girl is, where specifically she would come from, like East Asia, and just lots of different things. We knew that we were supposed to adopt off of the waiting list, which meant that they're not, the quote unquote normal or perfect children, that there might be something that, was wrong with them or whatever, but we knew we were supposed to adopt off the waiting list. And
so the child without hope in a sense.
well, definitely, because at some point in time, China wasn't allowing more than like 1 or 2 children in the family anyways, and so if they would get pregnant, and then they wanted boys, and so a lot of girls would get left abandoned and that kind of stuff. So, but anyways, in March of this year, my wife came to me and said, I think we're supposed to start this process. And I knew this was coming. I mean, I knew that eventually she was going to say, we need to start this process. And a lot of times I'm just like, okay, well, if, God's speaking to you in this and this is what you feel, then let's do this. But I knew that it wouldn't be an easy thing for her to hear me say this, but I wanted to be 100% on board with her. I don't want to just sit back and let things go. I want to be 100% on board with my wife and what we do. Mm-hmm. And so I just was honest, and I said, I think this was on a Friday or a Monday, and I just said, I just have to tell you I'm not ready. Okay. I'm not ready to sit down and do this paperwork. I'm not ready to raise, $30,000-$40,000 to be able to do this. I mean, I'm a pastor of a new church. I got a lot on my plate already with what I'm doing, and I'm just, I'd like to keep focusing on that, our marriage, our life, and I'm just not ready, and I'm really sorry. And she took it pretty well. I mean, things were fine, and she just knew that when it was ready that God would move in my heart. And so about 5 days goes by, and it was the last day of school. And I remember we all got up, and my wife woke up, and normally we kind of have a routine of, getting up, getting coffee, getting the kids ready, and sending them off to school, and I'll go to work, and she'll do her thing or whatever. And I remember she got up, and she just went and laid on the couch and just kind of curled up with a blanket. And I'm just like, are you okay? Do you not sleep okay? Or is everything okay?
Are you feeling okay?
And she just said, I don't really want to talk about it. And what I learned is that she was feeling pretty down and out about me saying that I didn't feel like it was time, because it wasn't that she wanted to do it. It was because she felt like God said, now is the time you have to step out in faith to do this. Mm-hmm. And so there's a proverb that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. Mm-hmm. And her hope was deferred. It just kept getting deferred and deferred and deferred. And then finally when her husband says, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen, then, she was just not feeling real hopeful about it. And so I started to get a little frustrated about that. And I just said, if I am in the way, like if I'm the one who's the barrier in the way of what God's doing here, then I want to get out of the way. I don't want to be in the way of what God's planning to do. So have a great day. I'm going to go to work now. And I live about 5 minutes from here, from church, and maybe a little less than that. And I just got in my truck, and I don't normally hop in my truck and start this day with excitement and prayer and all. I'm kind of thinking about what I got to do. And I just got in the truck, and out of my frustration, I just said, Lord, I need you to help me get on the same page as Marcia. This is a little discouraging that she hears all about this stuff about it.
And I'm not.
And I'm not. And I'm just not there. So I'm just asking you, Lord.
So a Joseph and Mary thing going on.
Well, maybe, yeah. A little scary. But I just said, Lord, I'm such a practical guy. And I need you to show me this girl. And I need you to make me fall in love with her. Because I knew that if I saw her and I fell in love with her, that there would be no stopping me.
Well, that's my little girl.
Yeah,
Bring
absolutely.
my baby home.
Absolutely. So little did I know that in that 5 minutes after I told my wife that I wanted to get out of the way, I was driving and praying to church, on my way to church, and Marcia was online with the agency that we felt we were supposed to go with, not to start any sort of a process or to do anything except put our information, our emails down for their blog updates, so that we would begin to get information from the agency as to what's going on, and maybe a little bit of a step in that direction. Before she could even enter our names into the blog update, a page pops up and it says "Advocating for Ava."
Wow.
And a video.
Wow.
And so she now, if that were me to find it, I would have been like, let's do something about it, you know? In her cautiousness and in her peacefulness, and she just was like, okay, this is a little strange. You know, this,
That's Ava.
this is, well, okay. So she watches the video, and there's a woman on the video, and she says, you know, from time to time we spotlight children that need to be adopted, and this is a 13-year-old girl who lives in East Asia. You connecting the dots so far? A little 13-year-old girl from East Asia named Ava. She is a quiet girl, but when she gets on stage, she loves to perform in front of people.
That fits with you.
I mean, that's my wife is the quiet one. I'm this, you know, the stage guy, but she and so one of the things that God told Marcia several months prior to this is that there is this girl from East Asia who is longing to be with her parents. And at the end of this video, this woman says, and in Ava's own words, she is longing to be with her parents in her forever home.
Wow.
And so Marcia watches this video and goes, I don't know what's going on here, but I got to send this to Jason. In the meantime, I'm
the
praying.
5 minutes to you driving.
Lord, show me this girl, right? Because otherwise I just don't know what else to do. I get in, my phone rings. She says, I'm going to send you an email. Could you just please watch the video and then call me back? This might be our daughter, she says. And I probably rolled my eyes. Okay, I just confess that. I probably rolled my eyes.
Likely.
And I watched this video, and my eyes went from rolling to just welling up with tears.
Wow.
And I'm just like, and I remembered my prayer. Show me this girl and make me fall in love with her. And I called Marcia on the phone, and I was ready to talk, and I couldn't even talk. I mean, I was so choked up, and I was so
God
like,
just answered your prayer to
oh
the T.
my!
with
And
this.
as I said, Marcia, guess what? I just prayed this prayer on the way here, and now here's this girl, Ava, and I was just like in love with her right away, you know. And so I'm like, Marcia. By the time I could talk, then I kind of went into that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, so you got to call this woman or email or something. You got to figure out, like, you got to tell her the story. She's got to see your journal, you know. She's 13. She turns 14 in December, which means she was born December of 2005.
When this all started.
And that's when your wife first started thinking about it.
Yeah.
First started praying.
So who knows?
Oh.
I don't know if conception was happening at the moment this prayer was going on, or if she was even born, or what. I mean, I don't know what happened, but all I know is that in December of 2005, she prayed for this girl that she would be safe and protected until she could be brought into our home. And so now here's this Ava, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? So Marcia writes this email, we just saw this video and we think this is our daughter. Please call us. I mean, there was like no punctuation, no capital letters, no nothing. It was just, and I'm laughing at it, but I'm just like, send it. Like, who cares, you know? So this is one of my sermon prep days, and this happened in the morning, and I'm like, okay, let's just, now that we've sent this video, we just pray, and then I got to get to work and get on my sermon. And so about an hour and a half later or whatever, Marcia calls me. Hey, did she call? Did she email? Did she get back to you or anything? No, I haven't heard anything. Well, maybe you should call or email. And I'm like, Marcia, just hold on. Like,
Let's breathe.
Yeah, let me. I gotta keep focusing on my sermon here, and I'll call after lunch, you know, and then maybe we can see if they'll answer the phone or whatever. So I hang up and I'm back into my notes and my Bible, and I'm sitting here, and all I'm thinking about is this girl, and I just am like, I gotta call.
I'll call after lunch. Just kidding.
Guess who answered the phone? The woman on the video.
Wow.
So she knew.
And I said, nothing. Because I was crying again. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just saw this video and I must have sounded like just such a bumbling idiot after all of this and whatever. And she's like, wow, this is okay. All right, well, here's how we get started. And that really is what began, the process of this. And then I called Marcia back. I'm like, I called her and I talked to her and I'm, oh my gosh. So we had to begin the initial application fees and all of that. But I mean, it's just so, I don't know how long you want to go, but it just never stops. She said you got to have, you got to have like $7,000 to begin this home study and to enter into the China program. And then while we're talking about this, she's asking me about my past and all this stuff, and we're thinking there might be some mountains we got to climb up for that, but another mountain to raise $7,000 in like 3 days. How are we going to do that? I started a GoFundMe page on a Sunday, and by Wednesday we had $7,000.
Wow.
And all I did was tell the story. Like, this is...
God doesn't operate in money.
Well, obviously.
He tells you, go big or go home.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the money. I'll do it.
Right.
He'll provide.
And he did. And there were people, like, in offices that work with people from our church that knew this story that are watching this on their phones. And it was like watching a political poll. Like, look who's winning now. Look at it. Just, they're like, look what it's up to now. Look what it's... And people are giving from all over the place.
Wow.
I mean, over the time, we had people from Colorado that knew one person in our church that heard the story and thought, wow, we adopted and we believe in all of this too, and here's a check for $500 and just...
Okay, so where are you at with your fundraising for the complete adoption?
Well, we're only at about 7,000 because once we began this process and started, the money stopped coming in, but we probably need about another 30,000 in order to complete it all, so that we can finally buy our plane tickets and
go do the initial meet and greet. And
oh yeah, all of that stuff. And here's the difficulty in it all, is Ava, she was out there to be adopted by anybody. Just because we started the adoption doesn't mean we were matched.
Right.
And there was a good chance that someone else could be matched with this girl.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out about a month and a half ago that she was matched with another family. And we weren't even done with our home study process yet. So that drops it to about a 98% chance that we will, or that we won't be able to adopt her.
Right.
And so we started praying. We started praying for that family, the unknown family. We prayed for Ava and the agency and just everything that's involved. And we just believed that somehow God would move this family out of the way so that we can then, get to our daughter, who is clearly, after all of this evidence, is our daughter.
It definitely seems that way.
Right. And so we got a phone call about 3 weeks ago, and we were talking through some practical things with our agency coordinator, and she said, well, I got some news on Ava. She's the family that was going to adopt her is now out of the way. Simply because Ava is no longer available.
Oh.
And I'm like, wait, what? No longer available? And so, the short of it is that there are never any guarantees in adoption. Now, I will say this. There are thousands and thousands of kids
That need homes.
Thousands of kids. And adoption is the greatest thing that you can do for anybody else. I mean, that's the gospel message, right?
I was just going to say, that's what Jesus did with us.
Right. The gospel says that the most undeserved person is brought into the best possible position as a son or a daughter of the Most High God through Christ.
We are adopted of the King.
And so when my wife is saying, God was saying to me the other day, what has Ava ever done to want us to adopt her? Nothing. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. What have I ever done to make God want to adopt me? Everything else. I've done everything. I've given him every reason to not want to adopt me into his family or make me one of his sons.
You don't deserve it.
But yet, Ephesians talks about
you.
while we are still sinners.
Christ died for us.
Yeah.
Which is one of the verses I've put on my little Valentine's.
Yeah. I might be confusing maybe that's in John. I'm not having a very good scriptural memory moment right now, but we were all once dead in our sin and our trespasses, following after the spirit of the world, as Ephesians says. It says, but in his mercy and his grace, he brought us into his family. So,
What an incredible God.
Yes. And he's also the most incredible God that he can make what was somewhat impossible become pretty much impossible to now absolutely impossible. Because when Ava turns 14 in December, legally she cannot be adopted outside of China.
So we're praying for
So
a miracle.
Well, this is an absolute.
This is all God.
This December,
December.
she'll be 14. This December.
Okay.
And that's the legal limit. That's why we began this process back in whatever it was, April, May.
As soon as possible.
And we were going to cram in 7 months what normally takes 2 years.
Okay.
So we have just been
Trucking
morning to
along.
evening.
Let's
My
go,
poor
let's
wife
go.
is up to her ears in paperwork and doing what she can to help me to do what I need to do in the midst of this and home studies and so to go through all of this and then receive news that, she's not available for adoption anymore is just like, wow, this is tough.
But I think that's the gospel in this all. That's our decision. We have to choose to be adopted. God has chosen us for his children, but it's on us to choose that adoption. And that's the perfect picture of the gospel right now, is she has to choose to be adopted.
Yeah, I mean, it's, but the power comes from the Lord. That's the thing. Like, I don't have any power to
change
even
anything.
want to be adopted unless God taps me on the shoulder first and says, can I show you my goodness?
Yep.
Can I show you my goodness? No. Okay, I think God's going to say, okay, let me spin you around.
Try
Right?
this again.
That's right. Because if it's his
But
plan
that's
to
the
do
pursuit.
so, yeah,
That's-
he will change the hearts of the people in order to say, yes, I love the picture of the Pharisee and the tax collector standing next to Jesus. Because the Pharisee says, well, look at me. I've chosen to do all the right things. I've chosen to follow all the rules. I actually chose to wear this really cool outfit and I have a cool stick next to me that makes me look pretty important, not to mention my hat. Not this one, but the Pharisee hat.
In the robe.
And the tax collector sits next to this man and just beats his chest as one who is, in the public eye, probably a worthless piece of garbage because he's nothing but a thief. And he pounds his chest and he says, what a filthy person I am to not deserve any of this. So, again, I could never look at Ava and say, you don't deserve to be adopted, because to me, when I look at her, I think about someone who does deserve to be adopted. She, I wish that she knew how much we wanted her in our home. I wish that Ava knew how much her mother in Wisconsin has been preparing for her for 13 years. I want her to know the 2 brothers that she has who are 14 and 17 who would lovingly walk with her into school and protect her at every angle of her life. I want her to know that there is a church family here who has been praying and supporting and just pleading that one day she would be able to walk in here and there would be a family that just says, you know what, come in. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what language you speak, what language you don't speak, what you look like. I don't care. You are a member of our family already. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's the thing. She's already a member of the family here with all that's been going on. So I don't know what God's up to. I really don't. And if I did, that would not be a good thing.
Agreed.
That's wisdom right there.
So we pray.
Yeah.
And we ask everyone who's hearing this to pray
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
the impossible.
Absolutely. And to watch it unfold. I think up until a couple of weeks ago, I have honestly felt that I needed to be the hope for the hopeful and be the faith for the faithless, and I just can't.
It's not your role.
I only have
Jesus.
as much hope and faith as I can muster to live and move and breathe. And whatever God gives me is what I can use in order to be able to do that. My prayer, my own personal hope and my faith is that Ava will end up in our home in a couple of months, and then God gets the glory out of all
Amen.
of this. And I don't want anybody to look at me and think, wow, look how faithful Jason was in the middle. Look at Jason and Marshall, all the faithful people stepping out into all of these things. You want to know something? To be honest with you, I don't really want to be here right now. Right now, I would rather not.
Right.
I would rather just be waiting for tomorrow morning to preach God's word to these people and just continue on this journey of normalcy. But there's a pastor friend that you and I know that said to me, just be faithful. Every time I come to him all bent out of shape and worried about something, he would look at me and say, just be faithful. And so on my office wall one day, I had to take a big giant marker and write, I will not do normal. I will be faithful, even if it's, and then I just leave it blank. Because whatever I'm feeling that week, I scratch it onto a piece of paper and I tack it up there and just, many days I don't even like to look at that because I'd rather do normal than have to be in a situation where I am not in control, I don't know the outcome, and I'll probably look like an idiot to everybody else who's around me and everybody who generously gave all of their money and who will give all of their money if we continue on in this process.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to be faithful.
He only calls us to be faithful.
Yeah, that's right.
And he does amazing things.
That's right.
I mean, for me to go to the White House because of a Valentine is insanity.
Right.
Like,
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So we have a God that does the impossible.
Yeah.
And so we encourage people who are listening to pray and find his GoFundMe page and encourage this process of adoption of a child that's been pursued for her entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just watch what God does.
And stay tuned for the update, because this will happen. May not be what we look and see and want it to be, but something will be happening that's glorifying God.
That's right. That's right.